Hey everyone! Today I want to talk about adopting cats in Japan. When I was getting ready to adopt my cats in Japan, I was looking for a video like this, and while I found some good information online, I couldn't find exactly what I was looking for, so I thought I'd just make a video about my experience today. So I lived in Japan for almost 5 years, and I currently have 2 cats. I got them each in slightly different ways, so I want to talk about both those ways today. But first, I think it's important to give you a little bit of background information on the kind of pet scene that exists in Japan. Japan doesn't have so many animal rights laws or regulations, and because of this, there are a ton of pet shops throughout all of Tokyo especially. These pet shops are kind of small. They keep the really tiny baby cats and dogs in tiny cages, and while I think the staff are taking care of them, not much is really known about where these animals are bred, and for this reason, sometimes you can see that even though animals are all purebred, they will vary in appearance from shop to shop because I'm not sure if the pedigree of the animals is actually looked after, and so I can't really speak for how many health problems some of these animals may have in regards to their, or as a result of their breeding. But these are so common, you can find them everywhere, and the animals in there are beautiful. They're the tiniest little babies, which does make you wonder about what happens to them if they don't get adopted before they get too big. But they are tiny and adorable, beautiful animals. Since all of them are purebred, you can see so many types of cats that I had never seen before with my own eyes in my life. Growing up in America, no one asks you what kind of cat you have. They just ask what color it is, and that's kind of how I grew up thinking about cats. So being able to see these cats that I've seen on TV for the first time when I moved to Japan, I have to admit was really tempting, but they're extremely expensive. Even an American Shorthair, which is the type of cat we have running around in the streets in America, will put you up about $1,000. So as you can imagine, the more popular breeds, the more rare breeds are going to be costing you a few $1,000s. It's me from a few days later, but I got something in the mail that I wanted to show you that I thought might interest you. This is a flyer that I got just like junk mail indiscriminately, and it seems like it's from a really large pet store chain called Ku and Riku. And as you can see here, this is a list of cats and dogs that are on sale. We have a toy poodle on sale for $300, an American Shorthair on sale for $500. I think the cheapest one on here is $300, and the most expensive one is almost $1,400. And I went on their website, and not only do they have shops all over Japan, it looks like, and this sale is happening all over the country, but you can see alone here, you can see here how many shops they have just in Tokyo. And when I went on their shop, I was curious how many animals they had for sale. And when I searched by age, I think there was only a few that weren't less than 2 months old. But yeah, so I think that shows a little bit just how widespread shopping for pets is. So I'd like to hear what you guys think about this in the comments. So not only was that kind of a deterrent for me from buying one of these animals, but I also couldn't really bring myself to contribute to the pet trade, knowing how many animals live on the streets and how hard it is to find shelters in Japan. There are shelters, they do exist, but there are not that many. Actually, a lot of people, when they give up their pets, will probably either put their animal outside on the street or they'll give it up to the ward. And in Japan, when you give your animal up to the ward, which is kind of like the district in the city of Tokyo that you live in, they have to keep the animal for I think 2 weeks and try to find it a new home. But in most cases, they just keep the animal for the 2 weeks before they end up destroying it, unfortunately. I think another problem in Japan is that there doesn't seem to be a lot of education around the benefits of spaying and neutering your own pets, and some people will let their animals outside even if they aren't spayed or neutered. This becomes a problem during, especially as you can imagine, kitten season, when the size of feral cat colonies starts to expand and people start to see the animals as a nuisance. Some people let their cats outside, they get pregnant, come home, and when they don't want the kittens, they'll throw them in the trash. There's a sign outside the area where I deposit my trash that says, "Do not throw away your cats or dogs or you will be fined." My street is not the only place I've unfortunately seen this sign, and I think that it must be, or must have at one point been, a common problem in Japan. With all of that being said, I decided I wanted to adopt a cat. So when I decided to find an apartment, even though I didn't have a cat at the time, I knew I was going to get one, so I made sure to find one that was pet friendly. This can be kind of difficult. Not that many apartments or houses in Japan are really welcoming of pets, but I was able to find one in the neighborhood I was looking at and also at the budget that I wanted. So I ended up getting really lucky, but there are places out there that allow pets. It's just a little bit harder to find. I began to search online for shelters and I found that there were some, but there weren't so many. And I couldn't find a lot of information about all of them in terms of how easy it was to adopt an animal or if they were welcoming to foreigners. But I did find one that seemed like a good fit, and it was called Alma or Aruma. One reason I chose this one is because they have open houses very frequently where you can go and meet the volunteers and see the animals that they have available to adopt. I decided to go one day when I had some free time, and when I got there, the first floor was mostly where all the dogs were kept, and there were many volunteers there. One of the volunteers did say something to me. At the time, my Japanese was not so good. I couldn't really understand, but I think she was telling me something along the lines of it would be difficult for me to adopt one of their dogs as a foreigner. But because I wasn't interested in adopting a dog, I went upstairs to the cat room and struck up a conversation with the volunteer in the cat room. She was an extremely nice lady. We talked about cats. We talked about, why I was in Japan, things like that. And I noticed that they had kept all the cats in kind of like large crates by litter so that the kittens could stay and only interact with the kittens in their litter. Maybe this is for health reasons, but it also just made it easier for the people to come in and see the cats that they had available. My eye was caught by one cat whose litter mates had already been adopted, so he was all alone and super friendly. His name at the time was Tigger, and I started talking to the woman about the adoption process. She told me that if by any chance my application was rejected, if I was to just volunteer at the shelter for a little while, she was sure it would be accepted. I was wondering if she told me this just because I'm a foreigner, but I had known that it was difficult to adopt animals in Japan. Because of what I mentioned before about the pet shops and the tendency of some people to throw away their animals when they get too old or they become too busy, I think the shelters take a lot of responsibility for their animals and want to make sure they make it to a good home. I didn't have the highest hopes that my application would be accepted, but I decided to submit one for Tigger. And of course, they needed to know everything about me, where I live, my job, and what kind of conditions the animal would be living in while it was in my care. One thing that I thought was a bit unusual and unique in the application process was that they required a guarantor. And this wasn't just for foreigners. It seemed like this was a normal thing. The shelter wants to make sure that if something happens to the person who adopts their animal, that there will be someone else who will be able to take over the animal in their stead. But the one catch for this was that the guarantor had to be someone Japanese. So if you don't have a Japanese friend, you probably have to ask a coworker or something like that. I ended up asking my supervisor, who's a very nice lady, who was more than happy to be my guarantor for my animal. And they have to be present the day that the shelter brings the animal to your place if you are accepted. Thankfully, my application was accepted and we made a time to have Tigger brought to my apartment so that my guarantor could be there and we could fill out the rest of the paperwork. Of course, there was a lot of paperwork to go through and an application fee, but once all of that was done, Tigger was mine. There was a trial process at the beginning where I had to stay in contact with the shelter about every day for the first week and then every week after that for about a month just to make sure everything was going okay and there were no problems. But everything was fine and thankfully everything worked out. I ended up changing Tigger's name to Yota. I wanted to name my cats after Japanese words and I really like Japanese onomatopoeias. Yota yota is an onomatopoeia for when someone is walking and stumbling and not able to stand up straight. I named him this because as a baby, he was kind of unable to jump and land on his feet. Now he does just fine, but I think it's a very fitting name, even though the name Yota is a male's name for humans in Japan, and so my Japanese friends, basically it's the equivalent of calling your pet Mike, so my Japanese friends kind of find it funny and don't think it's cute, but I think it's cute. So this is Yota. He's a big baby. He gives me hugs regularly, probably like 3 to 5 hugs. I get like 3 to 5 hugs a day from him. The woman who worked at the shelter described him as a mama's boy and said that when he realized I was his mama, he would treat me like such, and it's one of the more true things I've probably heard about him. He is such a baby. Right? You sleeping? Can I have a hug? Oh, thank you. Thank you. So in Japan, there is kind of a large community of people who are advocating for cats' rights, and a lot of them communicate in a Facebook group. In this Facebook group, there are many people who do trap and release in their free time to try to help the size of the feral cat colonies and to try to get many of the cats on the streets adopted. And when Yoda was about a year and a half old, I kind of wanted to get him a playmate. I felt like he was a little bit lonely. As you can see, he's kind of a needy cat. And when I couldn't be home to play with him, I didn't want him to be alone. So I saw a post one day of a woman who had found some kittens that were born in the street and someone was trying to get them rescued. She was able to rescue one because it was very, very sick, and unfortunately she could not rescue the rest at the time, but she was able to take this one kitten in and nurse him back to health. So when he was a few months old and ready to find a home, she posted in the group saying she was looking for someone to foster the cat because she had to go on vacation, and then she was also looking for someone who would be interested in adopting him. This was perfect for me because I could use the time fostering him to see if he would get along with Yoda, and thankfully everything went really smoothly, so I was able to add another cat to my apartment, and now they are best friends. He appears in a lot of my videos sleeping there on the corner of the bed because it's very conveniently placed under the heater. His personality is a little bit different from Yoda's. He's not as loving. He likes to sit on laps, but I think it's because we're warm. And he doesn't enjoy being pet as much. He's still a little confused about what pets are, but he loves to play, particularly loves playing tug of war. And he loves Yoda more than anything. Yoda is his big brother and he needs to be by him all the time. He doesn't like it when Yoda's not in his line of sight, and it's very, very cute to see him. So this is Hira-chan. He is named after the onomatopoeia hira-hira, which is used when leaves or cherry blossom leaves are falling from trees. I picked this one for him because as a kitten he was a very graceful pouncer. Like I said before, he is not the most affectionate. He likes his attention every now and then, but he's always a little bit confused about what pets are. He's more interested in what I eat for lunch or how warm I am, right? He's a little sleepy. And Hira's best feature, despite his cute little face, is his little tail. Yoda, of course, sometimes being the big brother, gets a little bit annoyed with his little brother and has to tell him who's boss every now and then. But they are just two peas in a pod and they're very, very happy. So it makes me happy to see them being friends.
Yoda, do you not like being the big brother?
So that's about everything for me. If you have any questions about adopting cats in Japan or about having cats in Japan, please feel free to ask me down below. And if you have any questions about my kitties, also let me know. I'm happy to answer anything you have. So we will see you in the next video. Bye!